All right, so my name's Justin Chalfant. I'm the founder of Patch My PC. A little background about what we actually do. So what we do, we develop a third-party update catalog that you can use for publishing third-party updates into Configuration Manager. So what's nice about that is the process of that, it's really no different than Microsoft updates. And we're going to demo this. I'm going to show you what it looks like to get the catalog, publish updates in. But the process really isn't any different than what you do today for Microsoft updates. So that's kind of our solution, what I'll be talking about within my session. And then the second session, we've got Jordan. He's going to be talking about compliance, reporting, dashboards, all kinds of fun stuff. And then we've got Johan on OSD for the third session. So with that said, I'll go ahead and just jump right into what we're actually doing today. So it's going to be total demo. So I'm not going to do any slides, but what we're going to look at is basically from A to Z, show how simple it can be to get those third-party updates published in, and kind of that full process of what our solution looks like, so you get an idea of that. So what I've got going on today, we've got a config manager site. This is actually running 1809, but some of the features we're going to cover, so we're going to talk about some of the new things in 1806 around third-party software updates. So that will be available in 1806 as well. But just within this lab that we're going to be demoing, it is on the technical preview, so we do kind of test everything as each technical preview comes out. So there's not really a whole lot going on. So right now within this environment, we don't have any software updates published to the site. So if we come here, we can see, hey, there's not really anything going on here. So we're going to go through that process and show you what that looks like. Feel free, if you have any questions, just let me know during the session. I'd be glad to answer it. Since this is going to be demo, I'm sure some questions are going to come up to say, hey, can it work like this, or anything that you guys have about what we're kind of walking through here. So our solution, there's really two options. I'll cover the differences. So you can use the 1806 third-party software update catalog feature directly in the console of Config Manager, and you can basically point to our catalog and say, hey, I want to go ahead and pull all these updates from Patch My PC, or we also have our own automated publishing service. The key difference there that we'll be covering is we allow a bit more customization when you're using our service, but both of these options are totally fine, and we'll cover what that kind of looks like for the two. So to install the service, it's just a small MSI. This would be installed in your software update point. So we'll just go ahead and walk through this really quick. Here we go. And then we'll get that started. So really the main purpose of this utility is going to be for getting the metadata about our catalog. So just a quick overview to show you like what kind of products we support. If we come over here and look at our supported products, we currently support about 275 unique updates across about 150 plus products. So all the common things that you probably have pain with patching today, so things like Java, Chrome, Firefox, really just a large list of things. Now, one thing to note about our products, if we don't have anything today that you guys would like to get patched, totally free to request. Really the key points there to be compatible, we would have to have a silent command line for the vendor's installer. It would have to work under system context, so all the stuff that you're probably used to when you're doing packaging today, that's kind of those requirements. As long as it meets those things, we're pretty open, if you have something that you want within our catalog, to go ahead and get that product added so it would be available so you could automatically get those patches flowing into your console. So the way the service works is really quite simple. We have a few key requirements. The first one's going to be the actual catalog. So this would just be if you subscribe to our catalog subscription, just a unique URL for your subscription. Now, whenever we publish third-party updates to WSUS and then they sync over to Config Manager, there does have to be a layer of trust in order for that to work. So there is going to be a certificate required that you have to use for signing the update. If any of you guys have ever used SCUP in the past, same certificate that would be used for there. So we have two options for the certificate that we can use. We could either generate a self-signed certificate directly from our utility, so that's just going to create a self-signed code signing certificate that's used to publish those third-party updates we download and push into your site, or you can import a code signing cert from a certificate authority. So if you're using Active Directory certificate services, or even if you're using like a public certificate that you request from something like DigiCert, we have the ability to just go ahead and click to import the cert. So that's why I'll be using this demo today. So if we look at my cert, it's just a certificate that I generated from my local certificate authority using Active Directory. So this is just a a code signing template that I issued. We have a post about this that actually went out this morning, kind of walking through how you can create this template if you did want to use your internal CA for the certificate that you use to publish updates. So I'm just going to go ahead and browse that and enter in my password. So at that point, we've got most of the prereqs there, right? We've got our catalog, we've got our cert. Now we need to determine what products we want to automatically publish to your site. So jumping over to the product rules, this is going to be basically a list of all those products that we had within our supported products. This is going to be where you can come in and basically choose of Patch My PC's products, what do we actually want to automatically push to our site so we can patch those products. So, wrong key. So there's quite a long list. These are going to just reflect all of those products. So the first one that I'll go ahead and choose is all the Adobe products. Now we do have some custom options that we can click over here. So the first one would be, do you want to publish the content with full content or just metadata? The key difference between that and for Adobe, since there's a lot of products here and I'll save some time, we're just going to do metadata only. So that means we're going to publish the scan data about the updates, but we won't actually have to download all our binaries. So that's going to, within our updates node, I'll show you what it looks like when it syncs. You're going to see, hey, I have 100 machines that need reader. But you wouldn't actually have to download all that content if you switched it over to metadata only. Now, one feature that I do want to talk about that we're looking at adding probably within the next month or two, we want to give an option where you can basically scan the config manager database and see what's actually out there, right? So with hardware inventory, we've already got all this data, right? So we could say, hey, of the products we support, those 200 or so different updates, how many are actually in your environment? So before you even start determining what you want to publish, you can know, hey, of these products they have, I'm going to go ahead and push these ones that are actually in my environment. So it would make just the initial selecting of what products you want to actually get a little bit easier, we think. So Adobe, we'll get all those products going. The next one we'll look at is Firefox. So we do have a client with an outdated version of Firefox. So what we're going to do for this update, we're going to keep it with full content. So it's actually going to download the update and it will be available for deploying in SCCM. Now, I do want to cover some of the custom options that we have within the update. So we know some environments, they might want to add some additional options when you're actually patching these different products on your client. So what we have today, we have this option to either kill the application before we perform the update, or we have an option where if it's running, the user's using that app, you could just skip the update completely, and then it will happen during the next software update, deployment, and evaluation cycle on your client. So this looks good. For this demo, we're going to go ahead and choose to kill that Firefox process while we're doing that update. Now, I think I just clicked that again. All right, so auto kill. Now, a few additional options we have. If there's any customization that you need to do with your own type of scripting, we have the ability to define a pre and post script that would run either before the update installation starting to be performed or after. So I'll actually choose that one for Java. We'll leave that one blank for now. And then we also have a new item. This was actually released in today's update where we can delete the public users or the public desktop shortcut for any application updates that get created. So not all applications have a command line that we can use to suppress shortcuts. So for this feature we just implemented, basically when the update is done installing, we'll basically look to see if that application left a shortcut. And if you don't want any public desktop shortcuts, you could go ahead and choose that option. Now, one thing to note, if there's common options you want for all these products, so for example, if you wanted any application to auto kill, we could apply this at the top level of all products, and then that's going to recursively apply that setting to all sub-products for vendors and products. So same thing here, say you want to delete the desktop shortcut, we could recursively apply that for every sub-product that we support. So the next one we'll look at is Chrome. So for Chrome, we'll go ahead and enable that with full content. We'll keep the kill option, or actually we'll say, hey, Chrome actually does quite well at doing a shadow copy and updating itself while it's running. So maybe you don't want to use that kill process. You'll just let that happen in the background, and then the next time Chrome is started, it kind of in place copies that update for you. So that looks good. So we got Firefox, Chrome. Let's go ahead and get Java. So this is a fun one that we all love. So we'll do Java here. So we'll go ahead and enable that one with full content as well. But for this one, what we want to do is a custom post-update script. So say that during the actual upgrade, most applications are pretty good at retaining registry settings and things that you might have deployed during that initial deployment of the app, like disabling updates, for instance. But let's say there's a scenario where maybe you forgot to do updates, or there's just some type of custom action that you need to perform post-update. So what we can do for that, we're going to run a post-update script. So this one, we can do PowerShell, Batch, or VBS scripts today. If there's any other type of scripts that you guys might want to run, just let us know. We could add support for that in the future. So this is just a simple batch file. And we look at what we're doing, there's not really a whole lot going on here. We're just setting 4 different values on the 32 and 64-bit version of where Java installs. And we're just disabling the self-update. And then we're also disabling the auto-run task for the Java scheduler for the updater. So quite simple. So we're just going to say, hey, we want to run this post-update. So we're going to point out to where that script is and then just choose OK. So that looks good. We'll go ahead and apply these settings. So at least for this demo, I think we're good. We'll just do those 3 products with full content, and then we have all the Adobe products with metadata only. Now, the next option that we're going to choose is how often do we want to sync third-party updates to publish to your site? So what I'm going to do in the background, I'm going to go ahead and click Run Sync Now, just so we can start getting those updates downloading. But what this is going to do, we're going to choose how frequently you want to download the catalog metadata. So on average, we do about 3 to 4 catalog updates a week for products that we support. So what this is going to do, it's going to say, hey, how often do you want this publishing service to go out and download the metadata about the new products or any new updates that come out and automatically publish any products you have enabled to your config manager site. So by default, it's every night at 7 p.m., but we have a lot of different options here. So if you don't want to make updates, maybe you only want to publish third-party updates weekly or monthly, you could basically configure this however you want. Now, what's also nice here, we do have an option where we can automatically trigger a config manager software update point synchronization whenever we publish new third-party updates to WSUS. So right when those updates say, hey, there's a new version of Java that came out, right when that gets published to WSUS, we're going to drop in a sync file, and then your SUP's going to automatically pull that so it starts showing up in your console right away, and you're ready to deploy that when it publishes. So yeah, pretty good there. So that's just the sync. Now, proxy and notification, so not much to say about proxy, but we do have a notification setting. So what this will do, you can enter SMTP email settings. Whenever a new third-party update gets published, it would just send you an email saying, hey, these new third-party updates you had enabled, a new version just got published to your site. And we'll also tell you information about the previous version that we auto-expire as well. So you get an email. I'll show you what that looks like once this publishing operation is complete here. In the advanced, not a whole lot to really talk about here, but one setting we do have is the ability to delay the expiring of updates. So this can be helpful if you have a long testing cycle for your software updates. So instead of immediately expiring the previous version, so let's say that a new version of Chrome came out this week, it's usually about a weekly process for them. So by delaying the expiration of previous versions, that's going to allow you to say, hey, we want to keep that previous week's version active. So we can do that for up to 30 days. So you can still be deploying that previous version during your testing phase if it takes a while, instead of us just expiring that first one, and then the new one would have to go to that testing. So you can just say, hey, don't expire that older version. Keep that active for a little while because I need to still deploy that and go through my testing stages. Not a whole lot else here to talk about, but some of the reports that I'm going to show you today, these are actually free. So if you wanted to install the reporting dashboards, you can just download the publishing service and click Run Report Installer, and that will install the SQL Reporting Services reports into your environment for free. So that's an interesting thing if you wanted to maybe use those reports that I'm going to demo for you today. Good. So on the back end, what's actually happened, we'll see where we're at. This might take a little bit. So what we can see in our log file, what we did is we basically went out and published all those Adobe updates. They obviously went quite quick because they were just metadata, so we didn't have to download any content for them. But moving down, we can see that the other updates we automatically publish. So it looks like the operation just completed. So if I jump over to my email here, we can see, hey, we just got this report because we had notifications enabled. So what this is going to show you is what updates were published with full content. So we can see Chrome, Java, and Firefox. And then we're also going to show you what updates were published with metadata only. So whenever those new products publish updates that we released, you could just get that notification. So that looks good. Now, jumping back over to where I said we do about 3 to 4 catalog a week, we do also provide information about each update that we release. So we have an RSS feed, and we also have an email newsletter that you can subscribe to depending on how you want to get notified. So here's an example of just the notification that we could do. So for example, this was an update we released, and we're going to give you information about each product that we updated within that release. If there's any security bulletins, any CVIDs, etc., we're going to give you information about that, tell you whether it's a security update, a bug fix, a feature pack, etc. We're going to link you out to the vendor's release notes. And we also run every binary through VirusTotal. So any installer that we release an update for, we're going to run that data through VirusTotal, which is like 60 different, AV scan engines, and just give you that data so that, that's kind of how we do our due diligence, make sure that those binaries don't have any type of bloatware, malware, etc. So at this point, we should be moving along quite well here. Now, since we enabled the option to automatically sync our SUP, if we come over here and open our WSync Manager log, what we're going to see is these third-party updates that we auto-published, they're already flowing into Config Manager because we trigger that software update point sync. So at this point, we're pretty much done with the service, so we can go ahead and close out of this. Now, this is going to automatically publish anything new that we release based on the schedule that you enable. So you wouldn't really have to go back into the settings tool unless you wanted to maybe enable a different product, maybe enable a custom script operation, something like that. But at this point, for any of the products that we enable in the settings tool, any new versions with the settings that you have enabled are going to automatically publish in the future. Another thing about that custom script, any future version of the product that you enable it on, it's going to use those same custom scripts if you define that. So you wouldn't have to go back in there. It would keep using whatever custom actions you define per that product for any future updates to that product. So jumping over to Config Manager, since we've already synchronized our software updates, if I go ahead and refresh here, we can now see all these third-party updates flowing into our console. So what's nice about this is they're no different than Microsoft updates. So when we publish them, they sync from WSUS, just how WSUS syncs with Microsoft updates, and they push in just like any other update or configuration item. So all the data that you would expect to see here, everything is going to be the same. Now, in this one, they just published, so we don't have a lot of scan data, but we'll jump over to another lab and show you what that would look like. But so here's our 3 updates with full content. So we can see that those have the green icon. That's how we know they're available and they're ready to deploy. For all those Adobe products we did metadata, we can see that they're showing up blue here. So that means we wouldn't actually be able to download these into an update package yet because we didn't actually download and publish the content with your certificate yet. But this would allow us to see all the scans, like how many clients need it, how many are compliant with that update, so you could get some better data maybe about whether you wanted to go back in there if you weren't really sure what was in your environment. Now, what's nice about this is jumping over to my automatic deployment rules. Since these come in as every other software update, we can use all the same deployment mechanisms that you'd be using today for Microsoft updates in Config Manager. So if we look at our ADR properties, we can see what we're doing is saying, hey, automatically deploy any update from Patch My PC. So if we preview this ADR, we're going to see those 3 updates that we published with full content. So they'd be available to deploy automatically now. So since this is set to run after every software update point sync, these third-party updates have automatically been deployed. So we've got our software update group created for those 3 updates. I've got them targeted out to my test collections, and they'd be deploying just like any other Microsoft update that you're deploying in Config Manager. So if we go and look inside of the software update group, we're going to see those 3 third-party updates that we published. Same thing with the deployment. So if we look at the actual deployment settings within this group, everything's going to be exactly the same. So if you're using maintenance windows for your Microsoft updates, all those maintenance window settings would apply because these really aren't any different than Microsoft updates from a deployment perspective and a scanning perspective from your clients. So things like the reboot behavior, your maintenance windows, all the same options that you would get today, it's exactly the same with this process. So that looks good. So they're already deployed. So what we'll do now, let's jump over to our client. All right, so we've got our client over here. Now, since everything's the same, you don't need any additional clients. You don't need to enable software inventory for scanning file types or anything like that. all the scanning is going to be done through your config manager software update point scanning. So same thing with the content. All the content's going to go to your DPs from your update package, so you don't need any different server or client infrastructure. Everything is going to be exactly the way that it works today. So what that means on this client, we're going to go ahead and trigger a machine policy cycle. So that's going to say, hey, this client is in this software update group that was auto-deployed. I see I now have this new software update deployment targeting me, and it's going to go ahead and start scanning. But before I look at that, I did miss something I want to show you in 1806 that's quite nice. So with 1806, they made third-party updates a lot easier. So the first option that is nice is they have the ability to automatically manage the certificate that you're using to publish updates. So if you go and look at your software update point, and we look at the third-party updates tab, there's this option in here that says allow config manager to manage the certificate we're using when we publish third-party updates. So we can see it automatically read that code signing cert that we imported in our utility. But what that does is the config manager agent's going to determine, hey, this certificate's being used, and it's going to automatically push that out to your client to the trusted publisher store, so you don't have to worry about manually creating a GPO to deploy your certificate you're using to publish updates to your clients. It can handle that natively in the 1806 client and site. The second option here is there's a client setting that allows you to enable third-party updates. So this client setting is translating to a local group policy that the client's going to set to allow third-party updates to install from WSUS. So these two settings before 1806, they're not necessarily difficult. It's a simple GPO that you could use, but sometimes, config manager admins, you might not have access. There could be a lot of politics involved. So when you're on 1806, you don't even have to use GPO for enabling anything on your clients. It will be able to automatically enable the cert to be trusted, as well as allow third-party updates to install through our client settings. Right, so jumping over back to our client. So we went ahead and got policy. So now what I'm going to do, just to make this happen a little faster, we're going to trigger a software update deployment and evaluation cycle. So that's going to get the client scanning against these updates that are deployed, and then just show whether it's required or available. Now in my case, I did show notifications on my client, so we can see that we just got that balloon notification in the task tray. But if we go ahead and open up Software Center, we can see that these third-party updates are showing up available because I allowed them to be in Software Center so a user could install them before the deadline. So this would be just like if you deployed Microsoft updates and made it visible. These updates are going to show up in Software Center just like any other software update. So if I go ahead and look at, let's see I'll start with Chrome. So I think we might have enabled the option to delete the desktop shortcut. So if we just keep an eye on Chrome while this update's installing, what should happen if I did enable that option is once the update's complete, we'll see that shortcut automatically disappear. So it looks like we're updating from Chrome. We currently have 68 installed dot something, and we're going up to 69, the latest version here. So there we go. We are now up to date. Looks like the icon is still there. So maybe, let's see, maybe I didn't enable that on Chrome. Let's take a quick look to see if I actually did here. I know I did for Firefox, I think, but let's just see what we actually enabled here. Rules, so let's look at Chrome. There we go. Yeah, so I must not enable that, but if we take a quick look at Firefox, I'm pretty sure I did, so we'll see that shortcut automatically get deleted for Firefox. So let's jump back over to our client. Go, and let's go ahead and start that Firefox update. Now, I think we also had we might have had the delete or kill process. There we can go, we can see a pre-update action, we killed the process. I'm sure some people have some questions about interaction. Anybody? So today, the way it's working is we don't have interaction support. So since this is running under system context, we're not interactively displaying any messages to the user yet, but that is on our radar. So if you wanted to have like a countdown to say you have X number of minutes before the application is going to force close, that is something we want to add. There's some complexity there where it's running as system context, as well as since software updates have a max time run, we have to have some things that we want to account for before we had that type of interaction here. So if you wanted to use the kill action, It might be best, at least at this point, to maybe use it during maintenance windows, off hours, for people that might have accidentally left things open. So there we go. We can see we went from Firefox 60 to 62. We can also see the desktop shortcut was automatically deleted because we enabled that option there. The next one we'll go ahead and click off here manually would be Java. So we did enable the kill action there as well. But one thing I want to note is that with the initial application deployment of Java, I didn't disable any of the self-update features. So within the control panel applet, we can see we've got our update tab showing here. If we look at the actual Java update policy in the registry, we can see it's just set to the default value of enable Java updates. So we'll go ahead and kick that off and get that running in the background. What we'll see is, since we had the kill action, this control panel applet for the Java application, that should auto kill here in a second. Now, since we did choose to run a custom post-update script, we do have some options to actually review whether your custom scripts ran successfully. So if we look at the Windows temp folder, that's where we're having our logger go out today. There's going to be the script runner logger for Patch My PC. So if we take a look at that, this is actually going to show any custom actions that we're performing based on what you enabled. So for example, we could see it killing the Firefox process there before we called the main update. And then for Java, we can see that we've defined this custom batch file that's going to run post-update. So if you did want to even see things about your custom script, your exit codes, things like that, we're going to log everything we're doing within the install just for troubleshooting purposes if something was to happen. So it looks like we're still running the main update, so I would just take a minute here. There we go. So then the batch file ran. Now within that batch file, you remember we had some custom actions for disabling updates using some registry values. So if we take a look again at our, just refreshing this, we went from Java 8 update 161 to 181. But if we look back at our Java control panel applet, what we're going to notice here, the way that that works, is if the auto update's disabled, you're not going to see that tab anymore within that control panel applet. So if we actually look on the back end at what our script did, if we refresh the Java update policy key, we can now see that we have these 4 values that we define within our post-update script for disabling Java and things like that. Now, one thing that we're going to be working on is having an additional context menu item for any application that supports disabling self-updates, so that if that was the only custom action you wanted to perform, you wouldn't have to make your own post-update scripts. It's going to be a simple context menu item. Say, hey, disable self-updater on this in case you didn't do that in the initial deployment. It would just be a single-click action, and on the back end, we'll know, hey, Java's doing a registry key, this other app may be doing something else, and we would be able to handle those client actions for you during that upgrade process. So that looks good. But from the client side, that's pretty much all there is to it. So we've got those 3 patches for those outdated versions, automatically bringing those up. So we'll go ahead and close out of here. Doing pretty good on time. And what we'll do, we'll jump over to another environment that we have. So this one's, we have a bit more clients here. So what we can see, we've got a software update group, just like in the other environment, but this has all our third-party updates from our catalog published. So we've got more scan data, so we've got about 10 different clients, so we can see that 6 of our devices are compliant for these third-party updates in this group, and 4 of them aren't. If we jump into that software update group, you can see a lot more data about each of these updates. So since they're no different, they're just configuration items, just like Microsoft updates, all the same metadata that you would see within your console is all going to be applicable to all these third-party updates we're publishing. So for example, you could come in here and say, hey, show me information about the release URL, right? So we could add that as a tab and get information about that. All the compliance data here, so we can see for this K-Lite Mega Kodak update, we can see we have 6 machines that need it, and then we have 4 that just don't have it installed, so it's showing not required. Same thing with iTunes, so we can see for iTunes 64-bit, we've got 3 machines that need it, and then we have 3 that would need the 32-bit version in this lab. So what's nice about that, since there's no difference in the way that our updates publish in and sync into Config Manager, all the existing reports are applicable for our updates as well. So if you wanted to run any of the reporting about software updates, whether that's a native report or whether that's one of our dashboards I'm going to show you here, whether that's maybe something in Power BI that you're creating your own reports for, all these updates you could report the compliance just like any other update that you'd be reporting for today. So with that said, we do provide some SSRS dashboards that you can use. So it's just going to give you overall compliance. So we're going to tell you how many workstations and servers that you manage. And then we're going to break out your compliance by month. So for any update released in a specific month, we're going to say, hey, you're 73% compliant with updates for this month. If we look at this number down here, this 285, this is going to be how many updates are either installed or required. So that's that count there. And we're 73% compliant overall with any of those updates. So if we were to break into that update this month, we're going to sort by the number of updates that are required on the most number of machines. So for example, we can see that K-Lite Mega Codec update that was needed on 6. That's going to just show up here. We could then drill into that, and that's going to take us to one of the native config manager reports where we can see specific details about that update. So jumping back to the dashboard here, we have quite a few additional items that we can report on as well. So that was kind of the overall compliance about updates by month. But then we'll also show you individual statistics for clients by operating system, for example. So we'll show you, hey, of all the updates that we're deploying, what are your Windows 10? What are your Windows 7? Are any of those compliant with all those updates being deployed? So if we said, hey, we have 2 Windows 10 devices, we're 0% compliant, that's going to show you of those Windows 10 devices, how many machines need how many updates. So you can get pretty specific and even drill into that machine to see what's actually missing on here. But that's most of what I had to cover, I think. So we got the reports. We pretty much set up the entire solution there. So it's quite simple. That's really the way that we wanted to design it to make it easy for what you're doing. Oh, one thing I do want to look at is the 1806 stuff. So say that you didn't need the customization that we're offering within our publishing tool. You just wanted to use the native console for publishing our updates. You do have the ability now, as one of the features they introduced in 1806, we can basically add our catalog directly into the console and it will publish updates. So let me show you how that works. So let me go ahead and just copy our catalog URL. So the same subscription you could either use in our service, or if you didn't want to use that, we could just come in here directly in your config manager console and paste in that catalog URL. Now, one thing to note about config manager is it publishes all the updates in the catalog using metadata only initially. So what we did on our engineering side, we knew, hey, some customers might not want every single product to publish and have their client scan against it. So on our back end, since there's no filtering available in config manager, we've basically added an additional URL parameter that you can use if you did want to filter by product. So for example, let's say that you didn't want to import all updates. Let's just pick one here that might be a good one to demo. Any products that anyone wants to use here for this demo? All right, doesn't look like we care. All right, we'll do CCleaner here. Let me just go ahead and do that. So say you don't want all these products to publish, but you want to add our catalog by product directly in the config manager console. So if we jump back over here, at the end of that catalog URL, I'm just going to paste in that parameter that says, hey, we only want to publish the CCleaner product from your catalog. Don't have config manager publish everything. So that looks good. So we're just filling some of the metadata required. So patch my PC dash CCleaner. CCleaner only, and we'll paste that in for the description. Looks like we'll have to move this guy out of the way, and then we'll do next here, and then next here. So we've now got our third-party update catalog added as a third-party catalog directly in Config Manager. The next option, we have to subscribe to it. So that's going to be what actually tells Config Manager to start publishing updates from this catalog. So we'll go ahead and do next here. That's going to download the catalog, and you do have to verify that you trust us as a catalog vendor. So it's going to make you click this. You can see, hey, this update was code signed by Patch My PC. I trust them. And then you have to click accept here during the initial import and then choose next. So that looks good. So what's going to happen on the back end once we're subscribed? In 1806, there's a new component that's running called the SMS ISV Sync Agent component. This is going to be the component that actually handles the publishing of catalogs. So what we'll see here in a second, now that we've subscribed, this component's going to kick in and then it's going to show us all the information about the catalog. So it should start auto-publishing. Now, the way the Config Manager feature works today is any catalog you add is going to automatically sync every 7 days. Now, there is an option to manually initiate a publishing sync from your console if you wanted to say, hey, let me get these new updates. But this is a feature that I know the product group, I think they are looking at adding some additional options to maybe give you custom sync schedules per product. But this happens every 7 days by default. So here we can go. We can see that it downloaded our catalog and then started publishing those updates. So we can see that the CCleaner updates were published here. So if we come back into our console and we go ahead and sync it, so once we publish them, we're just run a quick software update point sync. And then what's going to happen is during that sync process, we're going to see those that new CCleaner update automatically sync over. So this is going to automatically start showing that CCleaner update that was published directly from the console catalogs node. So we should see that kick in here in a second. There we go. So there's the Adobe updates, and then at the bottom you can see the new CCleaner update that was automatically synchronized in. Now if we do a quick refresh, we're going to see that update showing up. Now one thing to note that since any update from these catalogs do publish metadata only, there is one additional step that you have to do if you're using the third-party catalogs feature in 1806. In order to actually publish the content, there's a right-click action here on the update to publish the third-party content. So once that happens, that's going to be when Config Manager starts downloading the update binary. So that's going to be that same log file, the sync agent, but what we're going to see here is that it's going to kick in and it's going to actually download, and then it's going to use your certificate locally to publish that update. So that should kick in here any second. So that's another key difference between Config Manager and the 1806 in our service. We have the ability to automatically publish these third-party updates with full content so they're available and ready to deploy right away. So that's the key two differences today is you won't be able to do the custom actions like custom pre and post scripts or killing applications. You would just get the way the update is created within the catalog here. So that should, there we go. So it just kicked in so we can see, hey, it downloaded the CCleaner update, and then it's going to go ahead and publish that update to your environment. Once it's published, it would then be available for deployment, just like any other update that we publish using our utility. Now with 1806, I know we did talk to a few people from the product group, and even DJ mentioned this on Twitter. They are going to be looking at giving the ability to publish updates with full content initially, so it's a little easier so you don't have that manual right-click step for any catalog updates you publish. I'm not sure whether that's going to be like an option per catalog or maybe build it into the existing download method for your package. But that process, this was the first release, so the in-console stuff will probably even get better from here, obviously. But that's kind of the key differences between kind of the custom options we do with publishing and if you wanted to use the native console, kind of what those two look like. From our end, we don't really care what you use, just whatever works best for you. So maybe you don't care about the customization. You could just publish the updates and do everything directly in your console in 1806. But that's all I had. So hopefully we have some questions. We should still have some time here. Yeah, question?
Justin, with the native stuff with 1806, you were able to add the one product. Let's say you had 10 products.
Yep.
You have to basically set up
good. Yeah, great question. Do we get voice on there, or should I repeat that? Okay, so the question we had was, if you want to add multiple products in the console using that product parameter, do you have to have one catalog for each product, or can you append multiple parameters? Today, it is one catalog per product. The primary reason for that is because we're actually sending a different catalog file. So the complexity of creating cabs for multiple scenarios or doing that on the fly, as well as digitally signing that cab, it would be pretty complex, at least initially. So the initial release that we did to really make filtering available in 1806, it would be per product. So if you wanted 10 products, you would just add separate catalogs here with the product URL for each of those that you want. Yep. Other questions? Anything? Do we have chat on the webcast, or is it just streaming? Okay. All right. Yep, question. Yeah, good question. Let me cover that real quick. So the question was, if you want to use SDCM, what's the cost? So we basically have two different pricing options here. One's going to be the catalog for SCUP, so SCUP only catalog. So that's $1 per client. I didn't show that option today, but that would require you to use System Center Update Publisher for importing and publishing updates. So the key difference there that it's a quite manual process. So if we release a catalog update, you would have to go into the SCUP console, import it, choose the new updates that were imported and publish those. So the automation option you would need for SCCM publishing, and the reason for that, a common question I get is, hey, we only need the catalog though. Why is it more for SCCM? The key reason there is because on the engineering side, there's a new catalog format that you need to use in order for Config Manager to publish that. So it requires us to include every single digital certificate for any binary that we're using to publish updates for. So for each update, we have a lot more requirements to support Config Manager as far as including those. The second complexity on our side is, since there's no filtering available, we have to manage a separate catalog for each product that's basically using that parameter that I gave you there. So the Config Manager publishing or our service, it's the same price there at $2 a client. So that's kind of the reason why we decided to move that into that pricing option, because it's more complex to support that scenario. But yeah, great question. Yeah, so we do provide some discounts. So if you're in education, we provide some discounts. If you're a larger site, there's obviously more room for us to provide discounts on that. So we do, have volume discounts as you become larger. We can definitely work with you to make sure it works for you, as well as education, just regardless of their size. We'll definitely do what we can to make sure we can give them something that would work for kind of that budget to try to work with them. But yeah, we definitely have volume discounts when you get into those larger sites where we could definitely throw some discounts on that. I know somebody here has a question, and I'm sure the people in the live stream would, so let's get some more questions going. Yep. Yeah, great question. So the question was, is there a rollback feature for the patches, I'm assuming, the third-party update patches? So the way it works today, since we're going through the update engine of Config Manager, there's no uninstall option within that. Now, if we had customers that had an issue with the patch, what we could do is we could create an update for their subscription that does like a custom action. So we could say, hey, if this new version's installed, we could detect that, and then we could have logic that says, hey, let's detect if this version's installed, and we could create like a package on our end to maybe revert you back to the previous version, or it really depends on the scenario. But natively, there's no uninstall feature for the updates. But if you had something specific that, hey, this patch went out, something happened, we can definitely work with maybe doing an update or giving you maybe a package and program or some way to get you back. We can definitely help with that, because from all this packaging, we know how the installs work, how the uninstall commands work. So we could definitely do something to try to work with you to make sure that we could give you an easy process for getting back. Yeah, question? Yeah, great question. So frequency. The way that our scheduling works, so just looking over at our RSS feed, it's going to depend on how often products get updated. Our option is usually if there's a product updated before 10 a.m. Mountain Standard Time, we almost always get that up and tested and out to our subscription the same day. So our catalog updates usually go out about 2 to 3 p.m. Mountain Time. So our testing cycle is quite fast. So, things that day before about 10 a.m., we almost get out the same day. Now, obviously, critical things, Java, other security updates, we could push out 2 updates if something came out and we wanted to get that out. So we're really quick. If it's just like maybe a single product for a small update, just a feature that's not really security or anything, and there's just like one product for that day out of like the 200 or so updates we support, we might push that back to include in the second day, just so we're not doing a specific update for something that most likely won't provide that much value if it's not, if it's just a small fix within a product. But yeah, quite quick with the turnaround testing and getting that back to you. Yeah.
So in this case, we also see for simulation scheduling daily basis, right?
Yeah, so not every day we have a product update, but usually about 3 to 4 is kind of how it works out. Yeah, you can get notified. So that's kind of the email or RSS feed we're looking at. So if you wanted to know when a new update comes out, that's going to be that initial email that you could say, where you get all the release notes, any security information. And then that option to get emails in the publishing service, that's going to be actually if a new update got published to your site. So you might not have all the products enabled. So there's kind of two options there. If you're not really too concerned about knowing what comes out for every update, maybe you don't worry about that initial email or RSS feed, but you just kind of monitor when the publishing services pushes those products you have enabled, and then you get kind of a similar notification about that new update.
Question on Twitter. Is there ability for custom install command line or just pre-import script option?
Yeah. Yeah, great question. So the option or the question was, is there the ability to modify the command line per update? So today with our publishing service, we don't have like an option where you can right click and say view or edit the command line. So that is something that we have the capability within the tool to now add. So it's not like SCCM where it's going to always use whatever is in the metadata of the catalog. We have flexibility for doing things now that we have our own service for adding scripts. So that is on the radar of being able to right click, maybe view the command line and or add additional parameters within the actual installer. But it's not available today, but something we're going to be looking at in one of our next updates. A few other things that we're looking at adding for context menu is some more custom actions. One of the ones that we got were maybe starting and stopping services pre and post update. I'd be really interested in hearing you guys' feedback after this about what actions would you want to perform that would provide value for doing these patching. So would there be any additional items besides the desktop shortcuts, killing the processes, stopping services? What would be an action that we could basically add into a simple click or give you like a prompt to say, hey, what's this service name and stop it? I'd be interested in hearing kind of the feedback that would make those type of custom actions that would help you out in your patching process. Yep.
It says add custom pre and post update installation scripts. What are the supported languages you use?
Yeah. So pre and post update scripts, we support VBScript, Batch, and PowerShell today. If there's any type of engine that you use on Windows that you would want to support in addition to that, that's something we could easily add on our side in an update to the publishing service. Other questions? All right, 2 minutes. One more question. All right, nobody. Well, if there's no more questions, thank you guys. Thanks, Johan, and everybody who kind of runs the group, as well as all of you that attended, for having a sponsor and kind of show you what we're all about. I'll be hanging around. We have some sessions and breaks in between the next two. Love to answer any questions that you guys might have if you didn't want to ask it here. Thank you.